Hello, my name is Stevana Salazar. We're with the Kickapoo Traditional Tribe of Texas.
Hi, my name is Manuel Epi Suke, and I'm part of the Kickapoo Tribe. When I was in high school, I brought back a club, Kickapoo Elite Club for CSU in high school. And it was just something to keep the tribal youth to be busy and to get motivation to do better for the society and to keep them out of drugs, alcohol, and that's one of the few things that I've done for the society.
I also have been in the club as well, and I also wasn't in a club that our tribe had, which is a youth KTT Unity Club, and we used to do like community service. Like we painted basketball court, we've done like fundraising sales, and I've also
well, what I remember hearing is how the history, basically people always ask me, how did the Kickapoo tribe end up in Eagle Pass? Well, what I remember hearing is that at some point we were migrating away from the colonizers to be safe and to continue our traditional life. And apparently there was two sets of Kickapoos. One went up north and one went to south. Mm-hmm. And the reason why, one saw our sacred fire burning in the north, and the other set saw another fire burning in the south. So they both split up, and as they went down lower states, some band of Kickapoo stayed behind, such as Kansas, they stayed there. Another set stayed in Oklahoma. Another one took a little bit of rest at San Angelo, Texas. And then they continued going to Mexico. But when they got to Mexico, they were halted by Mexican soldiers to ask them, what are you doing here? What do you need? And basically, they were seeking refuge in their own land, away from colonizers that will probably, remove them from the earth. So they asked them if they can see if they can give them land to go and see if they can live peacefully somewhere in Mexico, where the United States wouldn't be able to, hurt them. So the Mexican government allowed them to come and seek refuge into Mexico to have a wonderful, peaceful life somewhere in Mexico. But they had one thing in their mind, was to remove other indigenous tribes that were giving the Mexican government a hard time. So the Kickapoo asked the Kickapoo to see if they can help them locate those other indigenous tribes, to see if they can remove them from the mountains that they were hiding in. And at first we said no, but then that's when they gave us an option. If you don't do it, then we can't help you. You would have to go back to the United States. If you do help us, then we can give you as much land as you need, the support of our government to protect you from the United States. So the Kickapoo tribe, they had a meeting about it. Took them 4 days, 4 nights to discuss about it. And then the elderly men decided, well, let's help the Mexican government, because I see a future here where my grandkids will be able to live here peacefully and no worries about being attacked during dinner time. And so the elderly men asked their fellow men to go help them locate those Apaches, Comanches, and apparently there was Pawnee tribes that lived out there, and there was a Shawnee tribe, and
Muskogees?
And the Muskogees, they came a little bit after us. The Muskogee tribe came a little bit after us. Once they once they discovered that we were able to get land in Mexico, they wanted to seek the same refuge because when they were migrating away from the conflict of the United States. So after they discovered that the Kickapoo Tribe had safely found land and was able to gain support from Mexican government, the Muskogee tribe followed, Muskogee and Seminole. And that is one of the reasons why we have Muskogee Seminoles in Mexico, because they migrated with us. Not only they came with them, African Americans came with them also to seek a better life in Mexico. And then after that, the Kickapoo Tribe was able to remove those tribes that are giving the Mexican government a hard time. But all governments are basically the same. They turn around and pin you down and use you after you've done their work. The Mexican government tried taking away the lands from Kickapoo, but the Kickapoo were able to defend themselves and take the upper hand of knowing the land more than them. Because the government they were really focusing on the government policies, political views, but the Kickapoo Tribe were studying, they were exploring the mountains, the landscape, and they were exploring, as they were removing those other tribes, they were also exploring and knowing the land, because they didn't trust the Mexican government right away. So they used that advantage to know the land, to be able to defend themselves, know where to run to, know where to hide from, or to even know where to attack from. So the Mexican government wasn't able to defeat the Kickapoo Tribe. But the Kickapoo Tribe did lose a lot of members, a lot of burials did happen at that time. But somehow the elderly men still made it out strong and still had their traditions, still had their beliefs and culture strong at that time. So that's one of the reasons why there's Kickapoos in Mexico. That's what I remember hearing. Maybe some of it is a little different from other people's stories, but that's what I remember being told about how Kickapoos were able to migrate to Mexico to seek for a better, safer place to live for future generations.
And practice our culture.
Our culture was very important to us. They said the Kickapoo Tribe was considered a police tribe, a tribe that was that would look for would correct tribes that did anything that wasn't they're supposed to do. So the Kickapoo Tribe was always involved with all different tribes, correcting them if they're doing something wrong. If they're forgetting something, they remind them. And basically, the Kickapoo Tribe is a mix of 4 different tribes. 2 of those tribes, they're extinct, but those tribes, one tribe gave us the home for the summer houses. So that's why we have those summer houses, to remember that tribe that was lost, that was killed in a battle, but apparently the Kickapoo Tribe saw they needed help, and then they were able to remember them and honor their lives by building those houses. And then the second tribe, they were very close. They were called, they were from the plains, the other tribe. And that tribe, I don't remember the English name of those tribes, but I remember the Kickapoo name of those tribes. But I don't want to say it because there's certain times of the seasons where you can announce them, and not just in the season. And so that's why we're able to have 2 sets of houses. One tribe gave us a house to build, and the other house was to honor them for their lives. And the reason why our traditions and cultures is so sacred to us, so it can define that we're Kickapoos, to define us from other tribes, to tell the difference from other tribes from us. And our culture was one of the main things why we're still here living, why we're still able to know our traditions and our language, because those are one of the key prospects of living a good life, is to know your culture and your identity, to know where you're from. And sometimes even just knowing that can save your life. And so that's what I remember of the history of the Kickapoo Tribe, how they ended up being in Texas and migrating to Mexico. But we're gonna fast forward a little bit more to where Kickapoo Tribe came back to Texas, Eagle Pass, Texas, living next to the bridges or under the bridges. Well, they came down to live there to seek for income. In Mexico, there was not a lot of jobs or a lot of income stability, so they would come back to America to work up north. Basically, under the bridge was basically our hotel whenever we come to Eagle Pass. We will sleep there, eat there, rest. Next morning, we'll end up going up north. But there will be some elderly women that would stay behind to take care of those houses that were there for us to sleep in. And then those elderly women were able to find income by Social Security or food stamps, or basically assistance from the U.S. government. So they were able to stay in Eagle Pass and receive that income. And so that was basically was helping them stay and take care of those houses that were under the bridge. So whenever people come back from the north, from working, they'll have a place to stay and rest. And then the next day, they'll pack up and go back to Nacimiento. So basically, the Kickapoo Tribe is a migrating tribe. They never stop moving around. They go back and forth to up north and south. We still do it this day. We don't go work up north anymore, but we go up in Oklahoma, Kansas, and for educational purpose, we still go up north for colleges. But Kansas has medicine there, and we use that medicine still to this day. And so that's another reason why we go to Kansas. And in Oklahoma, for ceremonies, relatives, family emergencies, we still are connected to the Oklahoma band. And so, but the reason why we're still connected to them, because they have not lost their language, their traditional houses, and their culture. So that's why we're still able to connect with them and speak to them. But I can no longer say that with Kansas. Kansas, that band is slowly deteriorating from the culture. They no longer practice the traditional houses. They only have a handful of Kickapoo language speakers in Kansas. And I want to help them in a way. I want to help them bring back the language over there, bring back some traditions that they can be able to do. Traditional houses, I can't help them with that. Once those houses are gone, you can't bring them back from where that land is at. So Oklahoma and the band in Mexico, they're very still strong with their cultural views and traditions.
I would say we balance it by sacrificing some things in order to be able to practice our culture. Like, for example, as a college student, I have to do online because I heavily want to practice our culture and keep it alive. So, because if we let our culture go, that's a part of like colonization, and we'll just lose our culture. We'll lose our loss of identity. So we have to kind of balance everything by choosing exactly what is more important and what is more of a priority to us. So like, let's say we have a concert like one weekend, but then there's a ceremony that same weekend for a family member. Which one would you prioritize more? It goes on basically what you believe in more. So what we believe in more is like, what's more important would be the ceremony to attend. So we would, sacrifice going to that concert to go to the ceremony instead to practice our traditions and keep it alive. So with the youth, keeping it alive, it is kind of hard because like with school, we could get in trouble with the law for missing so many days of school. So we have to like be very communicative with wherever we're attending, like whether that's work or whether that's school. We just have to be very communicative with them, and we actually have to work extra hard to be able to like support like us being good in this area, like being modern, but also we have to work extra hard whenever we're practicing our culture, because we want to try to remember all of that, because whenever an elder passes away, a lot of knowledge goes with them as well. So we want to try to like intake all of that knowledge as well. Do you have anything to say about that? Basically the same, right?
Basically it's the same point of view. But she is right about the college, but she's right about the college, the school, the work. But in general, you just need to pick and choose which one you want to have in lead. One of them has to be in lead. It's very hard to keep them equal. Mm-hmm. Because if you try to keep them equal, that means you're going to have to sacrifice a time for something that's non-traditional. Mm-hmm. So more than likely, people would choose to be more traditional, because there's not that many Kickapoos left on this earth anymore. So that means there's not a lot of people that would keep the language going, the practices that we do at the ceremonies, the traditional dwellings that we still work on, and traditional moccasins, jewelry, clothes that we sew for ceremonies,
home building,
basically,
or mat
making also, basket weaving. There's a lot of things that we still cherish for the Kickapoo tribe to still have, to be part of. And so basically you just need to pick and choose which one's going to be ahead of the other one. Some people pick modern life because
they find it more easier.
It's much easier, and they have more support there. They have people that can teach them what to do in the modern life. Not everybody's blessed to have an understanding family, a supportive family in the traditional life, and not everybody's blessed to have that. They don't have the right tools, the right people to teach them, the opportunities to be taught how to mat weave, basket weaving, sewing cattails, clothes, jewelry, etc. Moccasins also. There's so many things that the Kickapoo tribe still do, but not a lot of people have an opportunity to do those things, just simply because they don't have someone that they're comfortable with asking for help in those situations or positions. So I could see why so many youngsters choose to live modern lives rather than living the traditional lives.
Because it's more easily accessible than, trying to find knowledge like within our culture practices.
Because our traditional practices, it's not handwritten, it's verbally taught
or visually taught.
Verbally taught through generations by generations. Yes. But with modern life, everything's basically handwritten in that modern life. It's in technology, books, And you can basically search up whatever you need help on in the modern life. In the Kickapoo life, you can't just search it up. You're gonna have to seek the opportunity to go and learn something that's a traditional act or teaching. So I see why youngsters prefer the modern life. And not only that, Kickapoo is it's a tongue twister. It's pretty hard, difficult for some youngsters to adapt with, to speak with. And not only that, some do prefer to speak English because you can search it up, read about it, learn it, study it. But with the Kickapoo language, it's not handwritten, but they're starting to adapt it with handwritten alphabetical or letters. But even with that, it's still a struggle to learn Kickapoo.
Yes.
Especially if you don't have any mentors to teach you how to speak it properly. Because in some families, Kickapoo speaking is just fast-paced. Sometimes they don't have time to teach their youngsters to speak it properly. They're just depending on them to hear it, to hear the Kickapoo. The more they hear it, the more of a chance they might be able to speak it in the future. And the ones that don't speak Kickapoo in front of their children, those are the ones that have a hard time learning Kickapoo because they don't hear it enough. So all I can say to the young parents is to try their best to speak Kickapoo as much as they can around their their children. And more importantly, having grandparents is a key, it's a big door opener for grandchildren to learn something. Because parents, they have a lot of things to do, especially when they're young parents. They have so many things to prepare for their children that sometimes they forget to teach their kids traditional practices, lessons, rules, laws, and basically the grandparents, since they're already done working on raising children, they have that time to teach their grandchildren what they know that their parents forget to tell their children. Parents, if you're a parent, you just have to be good to your kids and try to learn as much as you can while we still have elders. Once we don't have any more elders, then that's just basically we're just winging it in life with traditional life.
Yes.
So basically the elders are the ones that lead us in that dark path.
There are books, our live books. But we can't really say like it's an actual representation of like every tribe, because every tribe is different. Everybody has different traditional practices, such as ourselves. So like, I would say the representation, I do like it. They're starting to include like the indigenous people more often, which is nice. But at the same time, when it's like misinterpreted, it kind of makes us look a certain way as well. Like what's an example? Like,
for example, reservation dogs. I see the difference between that reservation and the Kickapoo reservation.
Very different.
Like them, they don't really have a foundation anymore.
No.
What I mean by foundation is their traditional point of view, their culture. It looks like that they don't have it anymore. It looks like
that's like a colonized tribe right there. That's an example of what were to happen to us if we weren't practicing our homes, our beadwork. Well, they do have beadwork in there, but our language, that all of that.
Their ancestral practices.
Yes.
They no longer practice it by my view on that show. So they're basically just like a live movie for us to see the reality of the possibility of what would happen if our tribe lost its language, practices, our homes, and basically what makes us Kickapoo. So I usually see those kind of shows. There's some movies that portray the same thing, and someone that's usually watching with me is younger, and I would always see, well, that tribe is what would happen to us if we didn't practice our language, practice on learning how to continue on traditions that were passed down by our grandparents and so forth. So I try to make those movies, those shows, like a reality.
Like an eye-opener.
What could easily happen to the Kickapoo tribe. So that's basically what's making me feel more grateful that my tribe is still practicing the language, the traditions, and the homes that we still practice on building and using for traditional purposes.
I agree. It makes me cherish it way much more.
And the representation on the Native Americans, it got better over the years. I remember a woman won an American Emmy Award, but she didn't want it. She was just taking it for an actor at the time. This happened in 1968, I think, and she dressed up in her traditional regalia. She went up on that stage to get that award for that actor that won it. She went up there to represent him. But what I noticed was that at that time, even that's not that long ago either. But I noticed that we were still being prejudiced, we were still being bullied on being Native American. So, but over the years after that, even before that, they were still mocking Native American clothing, like the headdress, and then the outfits, and then the war cries, the horses. Basically, movies still try to portray us at that time to make us look like we were the villains. But in reality, the U.S. government was the real villain, because they're the ones that did not hesitate on massacring children, women, and men that were trying to defend their families and their home life. So over the years in movies and shows, I see it progress into a more positive outcome for Native American representation. It's no longer just cowboys and Indians. It's basically now showing the lives of real Native Americans and what they do and what they believe in, how they really dress. There's even shows that show beadwork competitions within other tribes. There's shows that portray on Indian tacos, compare from different tribes on how they make it. Competitions on, for example, like the Navajos, they have a show, well, not a show, but like a podcast that shows what they do for a competition, which is showing just the outside of basics of their traditional lives, like butchering, sewing, weaving rugs. They portray a lot of what they know how to do in those competitions. That's basically exercising their traditional beliefs, their practices. So I noticed that over the years, the representation's becoming a positive outcome for Native Americans. Before then, it was just basically just Native Americans were portrayed as the villain in back in the days.
Yeah, so we do appreciate the inclusivity though of like including like indigenous tribes, like all of that. Well, we do have an idea.
Well, it's...
Yeah, we do have some ideas. We do want to teach more of our youth because, like he was saying, there's not really opportunity for people to learn. So we do have an idea of like teaching youth and like offering classes on
workshops
and on how to like do deer hides or like
sew clothing, moccasins,
things like such. We do have some ideas. They're in the works. We're like in the talks of it. Yeah.
Yes, and then I'm also trying to create a community group to start a community garden, community painting. So it's something that would be a positive outcome for the communities, for both Kickapoo and the Eagle Pass community. So that's what I'm working on right now, to see if they can work that up again, to bring it back basically, to have that opportunity for youngsters or even young adults that need to show, their hardworking hands to be part of, society as good citizens to society.